All right, so this is going to be a very high level of SEO overview. So to start off, what's the point of search engines? There's two primary functions of search engines: crawling and indexing. So basically finding all of the content that's on the site and then indexing it somewhere so that it's accessible again. And then the second thing is providing answers to user queries. So basically tapping on that index of organized and ranked content and providing it answers, usually in the form of a list of links. But more and more often you're seeing like answer boxes start to show up on Google, things like that. So answers in any form, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific link to a page. How do people search? So there's a few different types of intentional search. There's like three main types of search. First is do or transactional searches. So these are people who are looking to purchase. Like these are the people who are at the end of the conversion tunnel. They're on the brink of getting ready to buy. If they're not pulling out their wallet, they're very clearly focused on an end goal and making a purchase. So this is where we tend to see the highest ROI in terms of search terms. There's also no or informational searches. This is, again, a very common one, looking for answers on anything from broad topics to specific questions. And then there's go or navigational searches. These are if you're looking for a specific site or page. So this is when, if you go to Google and you type in YouTube instead of going to youtube.com, right? Like you have a very clear destination in mind, so you're looking there. So those would be very difficult to rank for, you know, unless you are the site that somebody is specifically searching for. Now, what is SEO? So at a very basic level, SEO is an acronym for search engine optimization. And SEO work is focused on making your website easy for both users and search engine robots to understand. So it's essentially SEO work is providing context through designing your website, populating your website with good content so that the search engines can have better context. Because search engines, as far as we've come, they still don't have the ability to interpret content like we as humans can. So how is SEO related to UX? I think SEO is a very natural extension of UX because it's not only about optimizing words, which is especially relevant to content strategy, which could be a whole another talk, but it's also really about optimizing structure and user experience so people can find what they're looking for and so that search engines can find your content and understand it. Google bots are getting increasingly good every year at taking user experience and design into consideration as ranking factors. So a good user experience on your website will trickle down and impact where your site surfaces on Google search. Briefly want to touch on this. Is SEO the same thing as SEM? SEM is search engine marketing. I would say no, and put simply, SEO is about improving your own website. So it's very internally focused, and I think very aligned with UX goals of, you know, focusing on your own product and making that better. SEM, on the other hand, is about convincing people to go to your website, letting people know that your site exists. It's much more externally focused and aligned with more traditional marketing and advertising goals. So now, designing and developing with search engines in mind, there's a few. I want to go through some basics. There's a ton of content here. If you do have a question or get confused as I'm going through, feel free to jump in, but we do have the 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. So first, again, search engines are not human. They can't understand text, images, and video the same way a human can. Good UX helps ensure that visitors to your site perceive it positively. That encourages sharing, bookmarking, return visits, inbound links, and those are all signals that trickle down to the search engines and contribute to higher rankings. These things it's hard to measure the impact of one aspect of SEO because there are so many little things that go into making something work. So it really is a case where a lot of little things add up to a much bigger whole. So my kind of argument is that SEO needs to be built into the design process and not sprinkled on later. I think this is something that we need to be considering on every major website redesign project that we work on. So first, content. some content specific SEO things. Content's got to be indexable. So this means your text needs to be in the HTML. So search engines need to be able to see your content in order to index it. This means don't do things like bake text into images if you want it to be read by search engines. For video and audio content, if the words that are being said in the video are meant to be indexed, you're going to want to include a transcript for that content so that the search engines can understand it. And if you have images, you're going to want to add alt text, which is actually useful for anyone who uses screen reader in addition to being useful for search engines. So people find content still by searching for keywords. It's a very necessary part of the search process, and keywords are still the primary way we communicate our search intent and interact with search engines. As you make your keywords more specific, you really narrow the competition for search results and improve your chances of achieving a higher ranking. So in some cases, that would mean, you know, if you want to search for something like burgers, you're probably going to have a ton of competition for that. But as you narrow that down to best burger in New York with a shake, there might be fewer active searches for that, but you're going to be much more likely to rank higher because you're narrowing down your competition for the search results. It's also going to be important to use keywords naturally and strategically. The point of using keywords is not to rank highly for all keywords, but to really focus on the ones that people are searching for that when they want what your site provides. Again, this is really about aligning like what the user needs with what your site provides, and not trying to reach and talk about topics that are not really in your wheelhouse. You really want to be able to give people good answers. Why is keyword research valuable? It's not just about getting visitors to your site. It's about getting the right kind of visitors. So through doing keyword research, you can learn which terms and phrases to target with SEO. You can learn about your customers as a whole and like what kinds of phrases and language they use, which might be different from an internal business language. It's also a really great way to identify content gaps between client and competitors. So you're able, when you're doing keyword research, to find out what the client site is working on versus what their competitor sites are ranking for. And that way you can tell like where, okay, your competitor is ranking #1 here and you're down at #9. What's going on there? It helps you give some ideas into gaps. A little bit on long tail keyword demand. Even though each individual long tail search, which is, you know, a lengthier keyword, like looking for a YouTube video about music, you know, whatever, like a lengthier term is going to be long tail words. So there's going to be less volume for each of those individual terms, but added up together, most searches are actually long tail versus those general words. So if you figure out which long tail keywords you rank for, you actually get better chances of ranking higher for those and getting more conversion. Keyword difficulty, just a little bit on this. Identifying that keyword is in high demand or has high search volume is not necessarily enough. You're also going to need to understand the competition and how much work it's going to take to achieve high rankings. So this is a case where if you're working on a small business, a startup, and there's a ton of like big brand name competition that are dominating the top 10 results, it's probably going to be pretty hard to try to rank onto the first page for those, you know, high level keywords. So you're going to want to really focus on the long tail angle. Some tips for how to incorporate target keywords into content. In general, use the keyword phrase that you're targeting and a title tag at least once. In general, we recommend using keyword phrases towards the beginning, since the beginning is valued more highly. Use keyword phrases once prominently near the top of the page. So this speaks a little bit to UX and design. Use related keyword variations in header tags. So those are your H1s, H2s, H3s. Use keyword phrase at least 2 or 3 times, including variations in the main body copy on the page. You know, so maybe different orders of keywords, slightly different language variations. Use keyword phrase at least once in the image alt attribute on the page. Use keyword phrase once in the URL, and use keyword phrase at least once in the meta description tag. So even just looking at this list, there's a lot of coordination and writing that needs to happen in terms of people being on the same page of including keywords and really thinking about the client, you know, the content editorial team and coordinating all of this. Some additional basic best practices: don't bake text into images, that's bad. Any candidate page for search should have 500 plus words. If it has less than that, you're in danger of getting penalized for having thin content. Hyperlinks should include descriptive language. I still come across a lot of sites that have big CTAs to click here, learn more. In the cases where something like a learn more is required, in general, SEO best practice is to also link the corresponding headline, which usually precedes the learn more, so that way that'll get more value. A little bit about architecture related SEO things. So link structures need to be crawlable. So one thing to look for, and I actually just noticed this on one of the sites I was reviewing, is making sure you don't have any orphan pages, so pages without any internal links pointing to them. If you have this, the bots are just never going to find your pages if they're not linked up properly. This is where site-wide navigation is very critical. Search crawlers generally will not attempt to submit forms, so any content that's gated behind a form is not going to be visible to search engines, so that's just something to think about. I know we often encounter clients who want to gate content behind an email sign-in or something like that. That content is probably not going to be visible to search engines, so just verifying that that's okay or not, and just thinking through that. The meta robots tag and robots text file both allow you to restrict crawler access to a page. You need to be careful that you don't do this unintentionally. It's happened before where somebody has launched a site and forgotten to remove the no index directive from the staging site's robots text file. And that means that Google's not going to index the site. So we always want to make sure that that's up to date. We also want to be mindful of setting up previous and next tags for paginated content. This is a very nuanced and detailed section that I'm not going to go into detail on, but if anyone's interested in learning more about that, let me know. URL structures should be human friendly, so they need to be descriptive and accurately describe the content on the page. If you're able to look at the URL and you can kind of guess what's behind it, it's probably about right. And generally, shorter is better. In general, use the primary keyword in the URL. Don't keyword stuff though. Human readable without a lot of parameters, numbers and symbols is always better. URLs with dynamic parameters can result in overall ranking. Lower overall ranking, and then use hyphens to separate words. Don't use underscores since those sometimes don't read well. Always come up with a plan for how to handle duplicate content. Search engines are really cracking down on pages with thinner duplicate content by assigning them lower rankings. One way to handle this that's been effective in the past is canonicalization, which is the practice of organizing your content so that every page has one and only one URL. So what you can do is use the canonical tag to address these duplicate content issues, and that allows you to account for necessary duplicate content. Like if you need to have a regular article page and also a print-friendly article page, you just need to set up that canonical tag on the print-friendly article page to point back that the canonical is the regular article page, so only count that in rankings. And it allows you to have your necessary duplicate content without affecting your rankings. You just need to be mindful of that and set it up properly. Some UX and design factors to think about from an SEO perspective. Page layout, so making sure that this kind of speaks to our obvious, easy, possible spiel that we often give. Things need to be prominent that are important on the page, and the page needs to be organized in a clear way. Visual hierarchy, so this I think speaks a lot to H1s and H2s and H3s, and visually reflecting that hierarchy as well as structurally. Homepage and site navigation, there needs to be really clear signposting so that users are able to navigate the site. Again, all of this stuff is contributing to great design and good user experience. For larger sites, there should be internal site search that's appropriate so that users can find what they're looking for. Forums should be easy to fill out. Minimal fields is required. And mobile friendly is obviously a big push for Google algorithms right now. Mobile indexing, sites are starting to get indexed by their mobile site now before their desktop site. So it's even more important that sites are mobile friendly, which we do all of this stuff naturally. It's interesting to think about some of the SEO specific stuff that impacts us or that is taken away from us. Page speed also matters. So if your page takes too long to load on mobile, which is essentially more than 3 seconds, you're going to lose about half your visitors. And that's based on a study that Google did. So I can pull up that resource if anyone's interested. An easy tool to use is Google's mobile friendly test to do a quick evaluation and get ideas on how to speed things up. Every site should be secure. Use HTTPS. Otherwise, it'll count against you. And then a little bit about specific metadata and stuff about the HTML. So key types of site metadata that we need to be looking at are page titles, header tags, meta descriptions, image alt text, and meta keywords tag used to be valuable. It's not no longer. I don't think that we use this anymore, but in general, don't use this anymore. It was too easy to manipulate and people were using keyword stuffing, so now it's essentially not used. The way you incorporate keywords is to just write them naturally into your content. So a few things to think about when evaluating site metadata. First, does it exist? So when we run a content inventory, that's often what we're checking for. Do you have all of these things listed here or do you not? If you do have it, is the quality good? Are you incorporating keywords? Is the length appropriate? There's specific length and guidelines for all of these things. Where can a content editor enter this information in the CMS? I think this is something we frequently overlook on projects, but because this is required information, it's going to need to be part of the, people need to have a place to enter it into the CMS. Similar along those lines, and something I think we could get stronger on is how can we really provide guidelines to copywriters so they write and know that they need to write this metadata? How can we make that clear? Are there ways to provide guidance within the CMS itself? I think these are just good things for us to be thinking about. Rich snippets and structured data. So structured data means adding markup to your content so that search engines can easily identify what type of content it is. Schema.org is a super useful resource, which I've really only started digging into more. It's got great examples of data that can benefit from structured markup. So like people, products, reviews, businesses, restaurants, recipes, anything with a very kind of standard structured field format is fantastic for this. And search engines are more and more including structured data in search results. Like if they'll pull in, if you have it structured properly on your page, they'll pull in a profile picture into a result. They'll pull in star ratings, or they'll pull in business hours or menu items. If you structure your data correctly, Google will pick up on that and you'll benefit from it. A little bit on absolute versus relative links. So this has to do with scraping. So scraping is when a shady business fetches your content and republishes it on their own domain. This still happens quite a bit. To protect yourself from this, I recommend using absolute links over relative links when linking between internal pages. So instead of doing that like .. to link like to the home page, actually include the full https:// full URL to link to internal pages. That'll just make it less likely if any site does get scraped, that it won't, you'll still get backlink credit, like you'll still be seen as the original source to Google. A little bit about measuring and tracking success. So key things to look at when monitoring SEO is tracking the breakdown of traffic to your site, so just looking at the proportions of direct referral and search traffic to your site. It's looking at different search engine referrals is interesting to look at. This is somewhere I haven't spent as much time, but there definitely are cases where you could make some edits to your keyword targeting and you see huge success in Bing over Google. So it is important to kind of keep an eye on the other search engines out there just to get insight into where you're having the most impact or traction. Keyword tracking, just being mindful and knowing which keywords are driving traffic to your site so you can figure out how to monetize them. Conversion rate by search term phrase, again, thinking more about conversions, like what's actually getting people to your site and getting them to buy or getting them to sign up for a newsletter, whatever your conversion measurement is. And then just the number of pages that you have that are getting at least one visit from search engine traffic, any pages on, and this happens to especially large sites. If there's pages that aren't getting any search traffic, they're probably not super valuable. And those are either worth just completely getting rid of or they need serious updates. Finally, some SEO tools and resources. These are some things that we use at ETR. If you ever want to learn anything else about that, you can reach out to me. Karen is also familiar with all this stuff. So Screaming Frog is an awesome one for crawling a site and just getting that list of all URLs. Moz Pro and SEMrush are really good tools for like keyword research and management and tracking things over time. Google Search Console is really good for noticing like mobile indexing stuff and any surprise changes like due to an algorithm. Like if you lose a bunch of search traffic, you'll be able to see it very quickly there. And then Google Trends and Search are free tools and to just use to get a sense of how people are thinking about a thing. So like often when I'm just starting out on SEO stuff, I'll go to Google Trends and be like, oh, what's the difference between this term and this term? Like business and company. Like, do people search more for business or more for company? Like little language decisions like that, I'll go to Google Trends just to get an overall sense. And Google Search, when I'm trying to get a better understanding of how users think about stuff, you know, I'll go like, how do I think, and you know how Google will populate like the three or four suggested search terms, you could just get some insight into questions that people have and are thinking about. Some additional resources, which I can share these links as well. I didn't get a chance to link this up. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Great. Really good presentation. Thank you, Shannon. Round of applause for Shannon, everybody.
Gotta take some off mute to applause.
Unmute to applaud. Cool, great. So good, a lot of questions. I guess taking it from in reverse. With tools, Ryan mentioned the Yoast plugin for WordPress, which provides relevant meta fields as you're working in WordPress and like kind of gives you like a live score. And someone had a question related to that, like do CMSs have, like WordPress, are there things built into CMSs that will make recommendations to content editors? Can we provide our content editors live with like, you know, these are the words we're trying to get in, you know, like, can things like that happen?
Definitely, there are tools, and depending on which CMS you use, some are better than others. WordPress is generally a pretty good one for being SEO friendly. Yoast is a very well-known plugin. My one like kind of hesitation with relying on a Yoast is I think, and I haven't used it all too much, but I think it like auto-populates some stuff or tries to figure some stuff out for you. And I do think that a lot of this needs manual human attention versus being automated. So that would be my only hesitation. But for limited time, I think it's a super valuable tool to use.
I use Yoast on Nerd Pundit all the time, and it helps me kind of manicure my blog posts, but I find that if I follow it to the nines, it makes me look like a robot. So I kind of have to settle with like, okay, I have the word count. I've mentioned my keywords a few times, but then like, if I really want to be specific, it will destroy my voice.
Totally.
So that I use it all the time. So when you were going through it, I was like, Yoast does this, and then I see why it's not perfect. But yeah, just to add to that.
Cool. Omar just had a good comment about his client expectations of SEO. It seems like they think like if we do all this work, they'll be ranked #1. Is there a way we can accurately like project like where they might be ranked, or like let them know like, hey, you might not, you know, like in the market you're not going to beat out Amazon, but you might be at number 10 or something?
That's definitely a tricky part of SEO is there's no way to guarantee rankings. Like you can't say if we do X, Y, and Z, you'll be #1. Like it just doesn't work that way. All you can do is keep focusing like on your business's specific user needs and are you addressing them? And if you are in a good way, the search results will follow. It's really about providing good content, good answers. There's no shortcuts anymore to get around SEO, and like you can't trick the engines anymore. Like you just have to write good, valuable content.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a lot about duplicate content. Like if we're publishing something on Medium and elsewhere that's like the same as what our case study on the ETR website, is that bad for SEO?
So that's another thing that I didn't get into any like off-site SEO factors at all. And I think that would totally come up as part of that. I would be hesitant to publish the same exact thing in two places, just because we want to have one dominant authoritative source. That's a tricky one. I think
I don't know that they would know how to relate it.
Well, because I think from our Medium article, we link to our website, right? Like there's.
Yeah, but I don't, if Google had to follow every link, it's, as my understanding, that duplicate content is on your particular site. Do you imagine the amount of links that it would have to crawl, like just to figure out if it's duplicate content on another site? Or even if you didn't, like, I don't know that that's something that they would do.
You can link canonically to other websites, right?
Does the Medium allow you to choose the canonical source? Like if there was a blog on ETR and you cross-posted to Medium, can you say that with the Medium tag, canonical tag, the link canonical tag and the head update to point to?
Yeah, I believe Medium has an import feature that adds the canonical tag. So there is a way to do it.
Go Medium.
Go.
Cool. So there's a lot of good questions in here. I think I'm going to have to follow up with Shannon, and then we'll do like a readout of the answering a lot of the other good questions. But I think in the interest of time, we should probably move on. So thank you, Shannon, and thanks everyone for contributing to questions.